We have a massive Minnesota Vikings signing inbound as a recent report has dropped a new quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to be breaking it down, what this means going forward for not just Sam Howell, but the entire quarterback room, as well as an update at the end of this video regarding Adam Thielen and what the wide receiver group is looking like for this team. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to break down here in this video. Before we do jump into it, though, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the sub button. We have a lot of Minnesota Vikings news coming, with so many reports coming out over this last 24 hours regarding quarterback and wide receiver. You won't want to miss it. We're going to have it all right here for you guys. But we need to get straight into this because obviously things are getting a bit crazy on the quarterback side of things, as this came out about an hour ago from Lindsey Theory, or Thyri, I don't know how to pronounce the name, I do apologize. The quarterback Carson Wentz is working out with the Vikings today, per sources. Now, this comes after a pretty big string of kind of conversation between Kevin O'Connell and the media surrounding Sam Howell. His really, not necessarily greatest preseason, but also comes on the topic that the Vikings have been looking for a veteran quarterback as well, and having that as Sam Howell definitely didn't seem like the greatest option when we first started to get into this kind of new system, new season underway. And going into this is a very interesting development. So, Griffen, immediately before we kind of jump into the later stuff and kind of how this all materialized, what do you think about Carson Wentz as a Minnesota Viking?
Time is a flat circle and karma is a mother, that's for sure. Because the guy that knocked us out of not the one that knocks us out of the postseason, but the one who led that team that knocks us out of the postseason in 2017 and played like an MVP that whole season, now is potentially coming to Minnesota. I think that's a really weird kind of twist of fate in a sense. But I think he would be a very reliable kind of backup. When Sam Howell was brought in, you and I were both really excited about that idea just because he had shown flashes in Washington, just wasn't able to kind of break through. Then in Seattle, never really got an opportunity. So we thought, okay, maybe Kevin O'Connell can bring something out of him. Well, it didn't show in practice because we heard reports that he was struggling there. Didn't show in the preseason because he struggled in those games. And it went and showed in spades in last night's game against the Titans, where he didn't even step foot on the field. So it goes to show that the Vikings, they wanted to see more out of Brett Rippon and Max Brosmer more than anything. And they'd seen enough of Sam Howell to say, you know what, you're probably not making the 53-man roster. You're going to get cut. And Brett Rippon probably is too, even though he had some solid drives in those games. But he couldn't really generate anything of offense for Minnesota on those drives he was playing. Brosmer was the only one who could really produce offensive efficiency in those games. So I definitely like him making that, but you got to bring in somebody else to be that third quarterback. Carson Wentz could be that. He has he has resume on him. He has an MVP nominee, and he knows how to play ball. So
Yeah, exactly. And, taking a look at the depth chart, I think this is where this really materializes when you come down to it. J.J. McCarthy, Max Brosmer, two of those guys, of course, very young, very limited experience in the NFL. I mean, pretty much none, to be exact. And Sam Howell, if he were not struggling, he would certainly be in that role. But I think that Kevin O'Connell really is acknowledging the fact that, these are two very young quarterbacks. They have very limited to no experience in the NFL. You need at least somebody who is capable of having that. And I think that also comes out with his quote as well right here, saying, neither McCarthy nor Brosmer has played a meaningful NFL game, but head coach Kevin O'Connell really be willing to enter the 2025 season without a more proven option. Ripen has had an up and down performance Friday night. He and Howell were both inconsistent throughout training camp and the preseason, and Minnesota could choose to keep either player. But as Alec Lewis is saying there, and as you mentioned as well, Griffen, it seems like one of those players will be cut. And at least some sort of move on the quarterback side of things would be made. And if it is, of course, Carson Wentz to add to this veteran side of the offense, it is a must at this point, I feel like. And as I mentioned, I think Sam Howell would have been a great one. We love the signing, and I still do. But right now, you can't afford to have him struggling due to him not likely going to be starting, likely not going to be getting too much play. And if you're desperate for someone to come in, a veteran to come in, Sam Howell just wouldn't fit that bill at this very moment. And I mean, going as well to take a look at his stats in the preseason, not really great. 1 interception, 0 touchdowns, 66.7 completion percentage. Now, it is only on 18 attempts, but you need to prove yourself in a very limited amount of snaps, a very limited amount of plays in the preseason and in training camp, and he wasn't able to get that done. So he may be a completely different player come regular season, but at this point in time, he is just not the guy the Vikings need at quarterback behind J.J. McCarthy and ahead of Max Brosmer, who is also kind of exceeding a lot of expectations at this point so far. So we're going to keep you guys updated on the quarterback side of things over the next coming days, as it seems like the stuff is heating up with Kevin O'Connell kind of voicing an opinion there in last night's game as well, coming out saying, hey, we're seeing some good stuff, but we still have a lot of work to go. But going on to that side as well, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in the wide receiver room. And coming out with a recent update, an NFL insider, Josina Anderson, posted that the trade between the Vikings and Panthers for Adam Thielen is not likely at this point. And Thielen is a major part of the Carolina core. We knew that, and we knew it was going to be a very hard thing to be able to do and trade him. But with what we could have done, with what we could have given up, it was possible, but it does not seem like the Panthers are going to budge. So, Griffen, we have another update regarding this at this point. We've spoken about the wide receiver room here in these videos, and we've mentioned a lot of names. We're going to kind of circle back to a few as well, and going on to a specific date that we can see a potential move by the Vikings being made, but at this point, Thielen seems like a no-go. So, what do you think about that? And I think, obviously, we all would have loved to see Adam Thielen back, but now when you're kind of checking the boxes, and we've looked before this video, there's not too many wide receivers out there that really fit what Minnesota is looking for at this point.
Yeah, as far as trades go, it is slim pickings. Adam Thielen was probably our best available option out of the guys we could trade for. Like you said, before this video, you and I were talking about potential players they could trade for. As far as signings, there's a few out there that you could go out and sign. One in particular that I will not shut up about until they sign him. But as far as players that they could be trading for that we were anticipating because they needed to clear cap space for Harrison Phillips, but now they wanted, because of Harrison Phillips, sorry, now they want to make another trade. I don't know how they want to just give up more to get another player other than draft picks. But when you look at players they could trade for, it's really only Jahan Dotson, who's recently in Philly over the past couple of years, Rashid Shaheed, who is fast as hell, but he is a Band-Aid at times. Then you got Sterling Shepard, who is a veteran presence, who's been around with New York and in Tampa. There's some potential there. And there were some other ones. Romeo Dobbs is another one that's been thrown out there, but he's had some injury troubles, though he does have a lot of talent. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot out there for Minnesota to trade for. On the signing side, there's a few guys that could be really sneaky ones that Minnesota could bring in and not have to give up a lot for. However, when you look at the free agents versus trades, I definitely like Tyler Boyd out of all of them still. I know in the comments of the last video, people were saying Tyreek Hill, Scary Terry, Chris Olave. Those are all fine and dandy, but I don't see Minnesota being able to make that happen from a financial standpoint and from just a return standpoint for a trade with those other teams. So that would be very much out of the question. I would have loved Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen was probably the next best choice outside of Tyler Boyd because they're very similar receivers, just the size difference. But I still really like the idea of Minnesota trying to get another wide receiver because we absolutely need it. Because if we have a big injury happen, like we've seen happen across the league in the preseason and last year in the regular season, we could be absolutely decimated in the matter of 2 injuries.
Yeah, and making that Harrison Phillips trade really cleared up a lot of room. And to me, at least what it's looking like right now, they're just making sure they have enough money to be able to go in any direction. And I think that's the smartest thing to do. If you're not going to have Harrison Phillips on this team for the foreseeable future, I don't like the trade. I love Harrison Phillips as a player, but a deal, we kind of expected it, but a 6th and a 7th, that's not at all enough for a player of his caliber. Especially when you could have made some moves, got a 3rd-round pick, I would even argue, for him, be able to use that for an asset in a potential trade, perhaps. Things like that can happen, and I'm kind of thinking about it now. When you're saying these big names, and, Tyreek Hill and Scary Terry, a lot of these players are capable of making this lineup. And whether or not the Vikings are looking to trade Jordan Addison, which I feel like is a crazy thing to say at this point right now, but I wouldn't count it out of the books if you're looking at players like that to have behind Justin Jefferson. They have the available financially. Whether or not they actually do want to go out and extend Jordan Addison has been a bit of a question here on this offseason. They would have to move on from Jalen Nailor if Jordan Addison were to stay. So who says that they wouldn't have Jalen Nailor as a 3, Scary Terry as a 2, Justin Jefferson's a 1? Would be a really expensive wide receiver core, but it's players who fit into a role very, very well. So that is something I wanted to kind of just put out there in the minds for you guys as well, and let us know in the comments below what you think about something like that. But one more part of this article here as well coming into it is a few names that have been mentioned, and among names that might be available due to roster cuts, which is this upcoming Tuesday when the deadline is, so that one's when you'll see a lot of names freed up, available signed. I think that's when we're going to see the Vikings really start to make their moves then, if it's already not a trade for Thielen before. But Romeo Dobbs of the Packers or Curtis Samuel of the Bills are names that might entice Minnesota in the trade market. Now, the article goes to say, it won't be easy, but we know the Vikings absolutely need to make a move to be able to get a wide receiver here due to the suspension, due to the injuries. They need to make sure this room is ready to go. And I mean, looking at this here, you see a lot of Qs, a lot of, one suspension, of course, Gavin Bartholomew out, but there's too much red on this list for the Vikings to not make a move. So we're getting a lot of signs pointing towards making a move over the next coming days, and I would say at latest Tuesday. So be sure to stick around for that because we're going to have a lot of stuff to cover over this weekend, over into, the next couple of days until we get to Tuesday, and we're going to be breaking it all down here for you guys on the channel. But Griffin, do you have anything else before we finish this video off?
It's going to be exciting. Wait until Tuesday. I'm going to be very anxious to see what Minnesota does. Obviously, people who have been watching the channel know that I'm hoping that they sign Tyler Boyd at the end of this. As much as I would love to see them try and make a trade for a guy like Romeo Dobbs or someone who can bring in a younger or younger but yet still experienced edge with a lot of talent and speed, that would be nice. However, I don't want Minnesota to just keep giving up draft capital or giving up players for it. Jordan Addison with that extension coming up, that could be pricey. And then with all the discipline stuff as well, that could be something on their minds. So if that's the case and they want to move on from him from there, then you go out and get an absolute stud for him. But if we're just talking about keeping Addison and trying to get another guy through a trade that isn't Jordan Addison, I don't like the idea of Minnesota doing that.
Yeah, and I feel like the Vikings could go in any direction at this point, and we only have to wait and see now. It's only a couple days away until we start to see some major moves being made by the Minnesota Vikings team, and we're going to bring it all down here on the channel, so be sure to hit the sub button if you haven't already. That's all we got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. That's all we got, though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.